You have legal questions. Amy the attorney has the answers. Welcome to today's show. And here's Amy.
Hello, and my welcome to Kim Benjamin, a criminal defense attorney here in Missouri. She has great experience in alcohol-related tickets, crimes, whatever you want to call them. And we are just going to get into the meat of the subject today. I'm very excited. She is knowledgeable. She is smart. She wins trials. She gets good plea deals. She does the work involved in a DWI, DUI. And I get asked a lot about this topic. And I really like to refer these on. These are very specialized cases. This is not a case that your lawyer who does a little bit of traffic work should do. This is a specific lawyer that deals with alcohol-related crimes should be handling this case for you. They are very serious from the outset. First time, very serious case. So anyway, let's get to the meat of the matter. And today we are talking about Missouri law. What is the difference between a DWI and a DUI?
Not much, actually, in the sense that one is driving while intoxicated, the other is driving under the influence. It's just a terminology. In other states, it's OUI or OWI for operating while intoxicated. It's just the lingo that a particular state uses. Our statute actually title is driving under the influence, but pretty much every lawyer, every police officer, every judge calls it DWI in Missouri. So there's not a huge difference. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
I will tell you that for me and my law firm, we call it DUID for if it's driving under the influence of drugs, as opposed to DWI just automatically means alcohol to us. I don't know if we're the only people who do that, but
that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, so we're just going to go into a first-time DUI, and I'm going to call it DUI.
And I'll probably call it DWI.
All right, so we're meaning the same thing.
Yes, we do.
All right, so first-time DUI, and Kim has an app. I want you to talk about the app first, and then we'll talk about the steps of a DUI and what's happening. But tell us about the app you have.
Yes, my law firm has an app that works for Android products or Apple products. You download it from either store, depending on what product you have, and it's called I Got Stopped. And it's an app that allows you to, you can record your entire encounter with law enforcement. It gives you some information about your rights as well, generally. My favorite thing about it is you as a parent will get this.
Yeah.
You have the ability to send a text message pinging your location that has an automatic message to your mom potentially or your spouse, depending on what's appropriate for you for your emergency contact. And it pings your location and it automatically says, I've been pulled over by law enforcement.
Yeah.
And then you can record the encounter and email it. It's all set up in the app that you can email it to us.
Is it specific to Missouri?
It is specific to Missouri.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yes.
All right. So first thing, download the app. But if you're getting to this video later in in where you have gotten a DWI, Kim, I want you to talk about when somebody is stopped in the state of Missouri and it's under a suspicion of DWI, DUI, what should they be doing? And I know it's different. It kind of depends if you've been pulled over before, if you've had convictions before. I'm talking about somebody that has never had any contact with law enforcement about alcohol-related stuff.
Boy, and unfortunately, that's such a big question because it truly depends so much on where you are within the state. If you're being pulled over by a police officer of a city agency, the police department, or the sheriff's department, or the highway patrol, and the county you're in matters. So there are so many. It's so difficult to answer that question simply. The simple thing used to be in the old days, you would tell people just don't blow. That's not the case anymore.
Okay.
If it's your first offense in Jackson County and you believe you're going to blow above a .08, chances are you should not blow because we can save your driver's license in certain counties, Jackson County being one of them that has something called a diversion program for your license, but you have to plead guilty to the criminal case. Often, and then there's other counties all around Kansas City that don't have a diversion program. So that rule that might apply in Jackson on a first-time offender does not apply in Cass, Lafayette, Johnson County, Missouri. And so it's not necessarily the thing you should do. It does apply in Clay County, similar to Jackson County. the problem is that I have had 4 people call me in the middle of the night, and I've asked them about 30 questions. And at the end of it, I've advised every single one of them to blow, and every single one of them blew under 0.08. Had they not called me and reached me and assessed the situation, they'd have been arrested, had a DWI, nothing we could do.
Gotcha. Okay.
And those 4 people had no charges.
Right. Okay. That's huge. Okay. So the answer is it depends.
Unfortunately, that's the answer.
It depends. Okay. So, well, why don't you walk through what would happen? And this is a non-checkpoint related stop. This is somebody, a police officer or a highway patrol sheriff has stopped somebody under suspicion of DWI. What's going to happen during that whole entire encounter?
Well, obviously, just like any traffic ticket, the first experience is going to be that the officer turns on his lights, potentially turns on a siren, and you need to pull over. And they're paying very close attention to how you pull over, how fast you pull over. Are you using your blinker? Are you pulling up to the curb? Are you hitting the curb? They're paying attention to how you stop, how you're driving, not just the reason they saw you in the first place, which could be non-moving violation. It could have been that your taillight was out or the light above your license plate was out. Gives them valid reason to pull you over. So they're paying attention to how you're driving. Then they come to your window and they'll ask for your license and your insurance. They're paying attention to how you respond, how you smell. They're smelling you immediately, depending on the time of day, the minute your windows roll down. Well, they're smelling you no matter what, but the time of day is the thing that kind of makes them a little...
2 a.m.
2 a.m.
versus...
And they're potentially watching a bar that they're allowed to do. Even though no one in the public realizes that's perfectly lawful, they can totally do that and watch bars. And so they're paying attention to everything you say, how you say it, are you slurring your words, how difficult it is for you to find your insurance and your driver's license, and they're noting everything. And everything's on video in most jurisdictions. Most jurisdictions have a dash camera from the vehicle that's watching everything. Sound is not always good, but the visual at least is almost always in every single case there. A lot of agencies now have body cams too, so their sound is good, they're right up on you, and we can see exactly how law enforcement handled the encounter. And that's often, frankly, the videos is how often we are able to win cases. But your experience is going to be, that's how it starts out. And then if they smell alcohol, they're going to start saying, where are you coming from, where are you going, which is normal in all traffic cases, and which you don't have to answer, but most people do, because you have no obligation to speak to law enforcement other than your driver's license and your insurance under any circumstance. But you do often get asked, well, how much have you had to drink? I smell alcohol. And so people start talking and saying, well, I've had a couple. I was at the Chiefs game, or I was at my friend's house, whatever. Their story is that causes law enforcement to then bring them out of the vehicle.
Okay.
From that moment forward, it's a completely different encounter than your normal traffic ticket stop.
All right, I'm just going to pause you right there and just say that I think it's a normal reaction, and I tell this to my clients to answer their questions. You want to be a courteous person, and
right.
you know, especially here in the Midwest, we're so nice, and they're interacting with you, and you want to. But I cannot stress enough that she is correct. You do not have to answer those questions. You are not obligated to answer those questions.
Right. But it's difficult not to.
Of course.
I answer those questions when I've been pulled over.
Yes. Well, and you also want to, anyway, yes. Right. Yeah. Okay. So out of the car. They're out of the car.
Once they get you out of the car, they're paying attention to everything. Did you remove your seatbelt, or did you struggle to get out of your car? Did you put your hand on the door to help lift yourself up? Everything you're doing, they're watching. And if you're having any difficulties like holding onto the car as you're walking to the back of it, which is where they're going to take you, to the back of your vehicle,
okay, to
the front of their vehicle, in that space where the camera has a clear, good picture, and hopefully the sound is working a little better because the officer's wearing the mic.
Okay.
And so they're paying attention to everything you do. If you're having difficulty walking and it's because you just had knee surgery, I advise people to start talking about that. Start talking about what's going on with you. If
right.
you have Meniere's disease, which is an equilibrium problem that causes dizziness and makes people often not walk straight, talk about that. Start
right.
talking about what's going on with you to
okay.
explain why you're not necessarily balanced and walking straight, because they're
yeah.
watching for that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if you also are intoxicated and you're slurring your words, everything you say is, if you're slurring, is going to be used against you. But I cannot tell you how many times we win cases because the officer puts in the police report, which looks really bad, slurred words, stumbling, bad balance, and all this information that when you get the video, it doesn't match the report at all.
Right.
So the video can be very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. And so when they're taken to the car, in between the cars,
Yes.
that is when they're going to do field sobriety test.
Every officer is trained according to the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. NHTSA is what we call it. They're trained all across the country exactly the same to do every single test the same, because these tests are not supposed to be considered valid, or you're not supposed to be judged on these tests if the officer doesn't do them accurately. There's 3 standardized field sobriety tests. Your horizontal gaze nystagmus, which is the one where they're taking a pen or their finger and looking at your eyes. And I often have people say, well, I passed that test. You have no idea if you passed that test, because it's about the involuntary jerking of your eyeball. You have no control over it.
Right.
There's over 40 causes of nystagmus in your eyes, and officers can not tell what kind you have. They can just report that they saw it. And in addition, some people naturally have nystagmus. One time, a highway patrolman, we were in court, and I said, what is this nystagmus and what does it look like? And he tested me, because I said, I have astigmatism, I'm farsighted, I've been wearing bifocals since I was 3.
Yeah.
I'm sure I have nystagmus. And he said, you do.
Oh my gosh.
So some people have it naturally. But there's 2 more tests after that have to do with walk and turn and the one leg stand.
Okay.
And they're testing you on, are you listening to their instructions? Are you following their instructions? And then how do you do on the test? And they don't tell you all the rules of the test. So I often have people tell me, oh, I passed those tests.
Right.
And again, it's really hard to know if you passed the test.
Okay. So if they just deem that you have not passed the test, the next step is?
There's other things that can sometimes happen.
Okay.
Before they got you out of the vehicle, their training teaches them they could do a couple things to see if they even should get you out of the vehicle.
Okay.
Most officers seem to blow their training and now do those tests, which are the alphabet test and the numbers test.
Okay.
And I've had people from other countries, English is not their first language, say no.
Yeah.
But alphabet, they'll pick a letter in the middle somewhere to start and then another letter to finish. So if you have any difficulties with that at all, which a lot of people do, it's not as simple as saying A to Z.
Yeah.
Or some numbers backwards. Yeah. They're testing you. You don't have to do these tests either. But officers will often do that at the end, even though they're training is that they're supposed to do it to determine if they're even bringing you out of the car at all. Okay. And then there's the preliminary breath test, which is this portable device that typically is not calibrated. No maintenance is done on it. Right. And they keep it in the back of their car, even though the operator's manual talks about how it cannot be in any it cannot be below a certain temperature or above a certain temperature, or it's messing with the mechanics of this. It's a machine. It's like leaving your iPad or your cell phone in the car. It can blow the circuits, so to speak. Sure. But most officers don't follow the rules and don't even read the operator's manual. So I don't ever recommend taking the preliminary breath test either. Okay. You don't have to take any of these tests I just announced. Right. Okay. Okay. You have the right to refuse everything. They still have the right to arrest you, unfortunately.
Now, that was going to be my next question. So they, even if you said, okay, I'm going to give you my name and my insurance card, or my driver's license and my insurance card, and I'm not participating in anything else, they still can arrest you and take you to jail. And then we're going to talk about the jail or the arrest part later and what you're doing at the station, but that is still possible.
It is.
Okay. But you haven't given them any evidence.
Correct.
Right.
So you have the choice to give them the evidence against you, or if you're lucky, chances are they're going to arrest you anyway once they brought you out of the vehicle. I've never, ever in 25 years had a person say, well, they brought me out of the vehicle and they did all the testing and then they let me go. They 99.9% of the time are going to arrest you anyway. Yes. So you might as well not give them evidence against you. Yep. But sometimes those videos are the diamond in the rough, so to speak, in the sense that the police report will say my client did certain things that the video shows not true. And the officer, when they lose credibility, because they're not telling the truth, or no, they're not telling the whole story, which is all the signs of your sobriety, which they almost never do in the report, but the video will show that. Then that's how we can win cases. That's how we get so many dismissals, or we win at trial, or we talk to the prosecutor, and maybe it's an amendment off of a DWI to something else,
Okay.
which I highly recommend you fight your first DWI.
Right.
Because the consequences are so severe.
It affects everything later on.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Your present and your future.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so they've arrested you, taken you to the station. Yeah. What is going to happen there?
At the station, well, sometime before you get to the station or at the station, they're going to read you what's called the implied consent law in Missouri, which is a script they're reading off a form. They're required to read it verbatim or substantially verbatim.
Okay.
And it basically tells you you're under arrest for the suspicion of driving while intoxicated. I want to take your blood, breath, or urine. And in Missouri, they're allowed to ask for 2. So if you say no if they ask for breath and you said yes and you blew a 000, they're going to ask you for blood. And then if you say no, that's a refusal.
Okay.
So if they ask you for breath and it's above a 0.08, they'll usually quit there. They can take your blood if they want to, but they usually don't ask for the second test unless the breath test for some reason fails. I had a case once where the breath machine, there had been some electrical difficulties in the building that had affected the breath test machine. They ended up asking for blood, and the person was like, no, you can't put a needle in me. Yeah. Where's the machine for me to blow in? And that was deemed a refusal. You don't have the right to say, I have a problem with needles. Oh. It's very challenging. Wow. I mean, you have the right to say no. But then they just either give you a refusal case and take your license for a year potentially, unless you have an attorney who knows how to fight and win those cases. Or they will go ask a judge for a search warrant and take your blood against your will.
Right. Wow. So that is at the beginning, the implied consent.
Yes.
And so then whether or not you have agreed or said no, that's when it goes further.
They will then set up the equipment, and they have to wait 15 minutes before they can allow you to blow into the breathalyzer, because they're required by their steps and their rules to wait 15 minutes to pay attention to you to make sure you're not vomiting, you're not ingesting anything at all. Okay. And so some of the cases I won, it's because the officer failed to make sure there was no gum or chewing tobacco.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But so they're supposed to make sure the mouth alcohol is gone.
Okay.
That's the thing they're supposed to prevent.
Okay. All right.
So waiting 15 minutes should, scientifically, they say that your mouth alcohol will be gone by then, and then you blow into the breathalyzer. Okay. And I've had some people have difficulty. Right. I know that clients who've had lung disease or emphysema have tried to say, I'm having difficulty with this. It's because I have emphysema or I have lung disease. Right. And so it's not necessarily easy to blow into that. It's much like blowing into a balloon, and some people feel like they're going to pass out. Right. But it's that's the process that they'll take you through for the breath test. Okay. So then if they're, so they say they've taken the test or refused the test. And at that point, is the stop over, or is there something further that goes on with the traffic stop? Well, most of that experience is at the station. That's what I mean. Yeah, I mean at the station. Yes. Most of that experience is. There are some jurisdictions that have a preliminary breath test hooked up. It's called the Alcohol Sensor 4, hooked up to a printer in a vehicle. Kansas City has this. Wow. And they can give you the breath test at the scene and never take you to the station. If you pass it, chances are they're going to let you go home. If you fail it, chances are taking you to the station and putting you in jail. But I've had people be arrested and charged with DWI below a 0.08, which is very frustrating. Yes. Doesn't mean we can't win the case. We have 100% of those times, but it has happened. Sure. Okay. What's the justification? I don't know. I don't know. I think the officers just think, well, I think you're intoxicated. I don't care what the number shows. Okay. Maybe they know the machine is not infallible. Reliable, yeah. Machine is not infallible. Yeah. And maybe they're concerned somebody has put pressure on them about liability, putting you back out on the street. I don't know. Okay. Otherwise, it happens, shockingly. Sure. If somebody has gotten, or what kind of paperwork are you walking out? Once somebody's posted bond for you or you're allowed to leave, what kind of paperwork are you leaving the station with? You should be leaving with the tickets for all the traffic violations that the officer thought he saw, including the DWI itself, or DUI. Not always, though. Those can come in the mail later.
Yep.
Those can be, if you have priors, those can be charges filed by the state as felonies in your future.
Yep.
6 months down the road, you get arrested on a felony.
Right.
But typically you're leaving with tickets. You're also you should be leaving with a bond paper if they made you post bond with a court date on it. Some places do make you post bond still. Other places don't. It's getting less and less that we see people, especially in a first or second offense, having to pay money to get out of jail.
Right.
That's less and less now.
Okay.
But it still happens in Missouri. And then the other paper you should leave with is the paper that tells you about your driver's license.
Okay.
Like, you have so little time to do something about your driver's license that you need to call a lawyer immediately.
Okay.
And someone who knows DWI, not just any lawyer.
That's right. All right. So let's get into when you have received a DWI, that turns into 2 cases. I tell people
Yes,
it turns into a case that
or
has
3.
Oh gosh. Well,
you could.
Yeah.
You took the breath test.
Right.
Or I'm sorry, you refused the breath test.
Right.
They got a search warrant and took your blood.
Okay.
And it was above a 0.08.
Okay. Yeah. So there's but for the most part, it's 2.
For the most part, it's 2. That's right.
It turns into the criminal case. I'm going to call it criminal, which are the tickets and or indictments, information. Okay.
Yes.
And that has to do with, the court of law and getting the actual DUI itself.
The criminal case is where you could go to jail. You could get probation. You could have to do community service. You could have to pay fines. That's all the criminal side that a lot of people don't like to call it criminal because they don't feel like they've committed a crime, but technically you've been accused of a crime.
Yes. Okay. So that's the criminal side, but then the civil side has to do with your driver's license and your driving privilege.
That's right.
And I feel like is almost as important, as the criminal side, because it has to do with if you can operate a motor vehicle, without restrictions in the state of Missouri.
Right.
And it is a big deal, and it has time limits on it. And that's why you got to get to Kim or another lawyer very quickly to determine what the path forward is with having to do with the criminal case and having to do with the civil case, but mainly because the civil case is the time is ticking right then and there.
Immediately your time is ticking.
Okay.
We call it your date of arrest, even if you were just issued a ticket. We call it your date of arrest because you were technically arrested, even though some people don't feel like they were.
Yeah, right.
They were arrested for a crime.
Sure.
So from that moment forward, you have 15 days to do something about your driver's license. If you provided a breath sample or if your blood was drawn, they wouldn't know the result of your blood test yet, but that's something they would send you in the mail with a 15-day warning that you have 15 days to do something to save your driver's license from a 90-day suspension if you're a first-time offender or a second-time offender, but it's more than 5 years after your first. It's still 90-day suspension. If you refuse, you still have that same 15 days before they've taken your driver's license from you, but you have a total of 30 days to file a lawsuit, to fight, to try to save your driver's license, which definitely requires a lawyer to start moving fast. So you definitely want an experienced lawyer who can handle filing a lawsuit for you quickly to try to save your driver's license. And they can get you what's called a stay order to allow you to drive during the pendency of that civil case. In both circumstances, a lawyer can do that. So it's just simpler in the breath test example because you just have to fax a form to the Department of Revenue. A refusal, you have to file a lawsuit.
Okay. And we'll just talk about money right now. In your lawyering, is this something you charge by the hour or a flat fee?
We do flat fees.
Okay.
All right. And we do flat fees that depend on what we're dealing with.
Okay.
If you're dealing with a blood test, there are much more serious cases that we have specialists who know how to help win those blood cases. So they're more expensive than just the breath case.
That makes sense.
And then if you have 3 cases, because you have the criminal, the breath test that you refused, so you have a refusal case, and then you have a blood test, and now we're fighting about that administrative action against your driver's license, and we have 3 cases. That's going to be more expensive.
Right.
It's going to be more expensive if you have priors.
Right.
Because the more priors you have, there are some mandatory jail sentences, and there are some mandatory prison sentences. So that's why we recommend you fight and you get a specialist from first case forward.
Right.
Not just someone who does a little bit of DWI. You want someone who really specializes and doesn't also do your divorces and also do, everything under the sun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm a believer. Okay. So let me ask you this, because you said you're going to file a civil lawsuit on the refusal. Is that something that the client would be expected to pay for, but outside of your fee? What would the client be expected to pay for something like that, filing that?
There are expenses associated with DWIs. The criminal side, we can hire experts to help us win, to potentially write an affidavit that helps support what we're fighting for you, a dismissal or an amendment. We can take depositions in criminal cases, which means we'd have to pay a court reporter for their work product. And then if you file a civil lawsuit, you have to pay for the filing of that lawsuit.
Right.
It's not that expensive.
No.
Filing a lawsuit and having it served.
Right.
In most places, it's approximately $100
right.
or less, technically, right. for the filing. There's a lot of small fees associated with collecting your police reports, collecting the videos. And so $200 in expenses is normal, but if you need experts and court reporters, which we don't take that money up front. We don't say, we know we're going to need this.
Right.
We can predict often, depending, like if we have a blood test case, our expert help us win every single case. We just got one dismissed this week because we hired an expert.
Right.
The government doesn't understand that blood tests aren't that reliable.
Right.
And actually the public doesn't either.
Right.
There are tremendous problems with blood testing.
I believe it.
That we can thankfully investigate what's going on and help a person win that case and win their driver's license.
So Kim's role in this is to pick apart the state or city's case against you. And so that may involve experts, but it also involves her expertise in having done this and knowing the changes in the law, which the DWI law changes frequently.
Unfortunately, too often.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of the legislators in the legislators in Jeff City. They get on a high horse about something and say, we're going to change this to do this. And
there have been some changes for the better, actually.
Good.
When it comes to your driver's license, because there used to be what's called a hard walk, meaning you could not drive, you could not get a hardship license. You
right.
truly were walking, so we called it the hard walk.
Yes, okay.
And now most of our clients would qualify, not all of them. There are qualifications, but most of our clients will actually qualify for being able to drive on a restricted or a limited driving privilege during the entire time their license has been taken.
Right.
The problem is if you have a CDL, it is almost impossible. Not impossible, it feels nearly impossible because you have to win the criminal case and the driver's license case to save their CDL.
Right.
And that's hard to do both.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
even if they're not in the CDL, even if they're not in the truck,
they're in
whatever.
their pickup truck on a Saturday night and have nothing to do with their commercial motor vehicle.
Yep. Yeah.
And their CDL's at risk for a year.
I feel that. Okay. So let me ask you about, I know the law has changed a little bit on this. Or maybe it hasn't changed, but tell me about checkpoints and like what the behavior, if it's any different than when we're talking about this traditional stop. Tell me a little bit, just give me an overview of checkpoints.
The basic overview of checkpoints is what it used to be and what we don't see much of anymore. I would see them occasionally in Cass County and in Kansas City, but they've really stopped doing them because they're just not effective. Okay. Actually, statistically, they're wasting a lot of money to catch maybe one or two DWI offenders out of thousands of people that they're bothering and inconveniencing. Okay. And the officers that they have to have at the scene during the checkpoint and the plan they have to put in place. There's rules about how you do a checkpoint from the U.S. Supreme Court down to the Missouri Supreme Court. There's rules about how they do it. Then they have to have policies within their department. Then they have to follow those policies, and that's actually difficult for them to do oftentimes. Yeah. And checkpoints just aren't that effective, and they're a very expensive thing to really solve the problem. Okay. So what they've switched to is what's called saturation. Just have more officers on duty at the particular times of night, have more officers watching bars. Right. And watching, being in Westport, being outside of Power and Light, watching when the Chiefs game and the Royals games end, more officers on duty. Yep. Paying attention to what's going on.
Good to know.
That's called saturation, and that's what they're doing more of because it's more cost effective.
That makes sense. Yeah. So not stopping everybody, just stopping swerving or
it's less
tail light.
inconvenient to the general public,
Yep.
and it's actually more effective because it prevents people. If you nowadays with social media, I cannot tell you how many times I've been on Facebook and seen, checkpoint warnings, people telling you, or on the Waze app, people telling you that there's checkpoints. So they just became less and less effective.
Right.
In addition to they never really had many valid arrests anyway. And so saturation is what they do, but it also prevents people. If you know that at a particular time of night, especially with Uber and Lyft nowadays, why people still have issues, it's because almost always they do not realize that 0.08 is almost nothing.
Right.
And they're trying to lower it. Utah lowered it to 0.05. 0.08 is almost nothing. Right. 0.08 is 4 12-ounce beers.
Right.
And if you drank them within a 2-hour period, let's say a sporting event or tailgating, and you kept it at every half hour you had one. Right. If you didn't stop drinking and you drink more than that 4, and you went to 6 and 7 and 8 thinking, it's been 4 hours, I'm good. I've been here since noon. Or I started tailgating at 9 this morning and it's now 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's the accumulation. It's so easy to hit 0.08. And most people say, I didn't feel drunk. I didn't feel tipsy.
Right. I feel fine.
You don't have to feel drunk or tipsy at 0.08. And oftentimes you won't. That's why people make the mistake of driving and then getting themselves arrested and not even realizing. But the good news is if you hire the right lawyer, they know that 0.08 is just a number and it doesn't matter. We can challenge the reliability of the number. It also is a presumptive intoxication number, but that does not mean you're intoxicated, because the law is there's a definition of intoxication. There's a definition of impairment. And that's how we fight those cases and often can win those cases too.
Do you have any general advice about a drink per hour or other than say, hey, take Uber or Lyft or get somebody else to drive?
That's the easy solution.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is the easy
If you
solution.
go to Power and Light to watch a concert, get a hotel.
Yep.
Or get an Uber and leave your vehicle, or Uber there and Uber back. That's what I've done.
Yeah.
The general rule, all I can say is you figure out your own body.
Right.
If you're a new drinker or you're a binge drinker or you're going out to get drunk, that's a different category. And those people need to plan to not have a car, plan to not have keys.
Right.
But those people who are like, I'm just going to go to, the plaza and have dinner and have a couple glasses of wine with my wife, or they're, going to the Chiefs game. You have to know your body, and whether you feel intoxicated or impaired or even tipsy doesn't matter. If you want to be really careful and cautious and save yourself thousands of dollars, thousands of dollars, because it's not just the lawyer fees. There's a lot of other financial expenses with the DWI and loss of driver's license.
Right.
But if you want to save yourself the heartache too, the headache of having a DWI, I can't even imagine how life-changing it is to be arrested and deal with the risk of I can't drive my kids to school, or the risk of I'm going to lose my CDL, lose my livelihood, all the risks that are involved. If you just say, okay, I drink beer, I drink 4 beers and I'm done, because the average body is going to take 1 12-ounce beer. That's your normal percentage here in Missouri. The percentage of alcohol in the average beer. I'm not talking about those like Lime-A-Ritas that are 8%, or a glass of wine that's even more. You have to really analyze, and our app does that for you. But there's tons of information on the internet about how to help you understand what type of alcohol could potentially lead to a 0.08. But generally speaking, for me anyway, I know my body, and I know that 2 martinis over 2 hours, I'm fine. 3rd martini, no.
Put you over the edge. Right.
3 glasses of wine, no.
Yeah.
2 glasses of wine over a 2-hour period, I'm fine.
Yeah.
4 beers over a 2-hour period, even probably a 5th beer in a 2-hour period, you're going to be okay. At least be below a 0.08, which is the goal, even though I've told you that it can happen that you get arrested anyway, unfortunately.
Right.
But knowing your body, understanding what you like to drink and what you're choosing to drink. I had a client tell me I drink 2 Long Island iced teas. I'm like, do you not know what's in a Long Island iced tea?
Maybe not.
Because that was a lot of alcohol.
Yes.
So you have to know your drink, understand what's happening. If you're at a bar where they give you a long pour because they know you and you're a regular, that's very different than going to Power and Light where there's less than an ounce of vodka in that martini.
Right. Exactly. Okay. How long does it take for a DUI? You've got a DUI today. Like how long, and I know every case is different.
It depends.
I know.
That's the greatest answer.
I just want you to give kind of like this is first time DUI, and just what would they expect in terms of, when am I going to have this resolved?
Right.
And I know it depends on all these different factors. Just give
It is not uncommon for it to take 4 to 6 months from the minute you hire the lawyer. If you have a good lawyer, they're ordering all the police reports, which every agency is different, and some are very slow at giving us that. They're ordering every video of every officer from every dash cam, every body cam, and the breathalyzer room video. That's going to take them, the lawyer, a good lawyer is going to watch them more than once, and it's going to be, that's 8 hours of video often is what's happening. Because if I watch a dash cam video, there's the forward camera video, so I'm paying attention to that. When I'm paying attention to it for a driver's license case, I'm looking for certain things. Then I have to rewatch it for the criminal case because there's other things that I'm paying attention to. I've gotten better and I'm able to watch it for 2 reasons at the same time, but in the beginning that was difficult. Sure. Then you've got the dash camera also is on the back seat. So anytime my client is put in the back seat, I'm then having to watch that video.
Right.
And then all the dash cams. And oftentimes it's multiple officers. Almost every DWI has 2 police cars and 2 officers on scene.
Yep.
Because the first officer always calls for backup for safety reasons.
Sure.
For safety of not just the officer, the first officer and that person, but just for traffic.
Okay.
They're often having to make sure that they're lit up enough, that the traffic is going around depending on where they are. So,
right.
Yeah, it's
4 to 6 months, but it could take a year. It is absolutely.
I just got one dismissed this week, and it was over a year. It was closer to 2.
Yeah.
And oftentimes our trials can be that far out too, because we're ordering all this stuff, then we're watching everything. The driver's license case, if they blew or have a blood sample above a 0.08, that case happens pretty fast, but still pretty fast in our world.
Right.
It's not pretty fast to the public. It's still a 90 to 120 days. We can have you driving legally while the case is pending for another 90 to 120 days. So that's good. But then if we lose, then there's all these other steps we have to take.
Right.
So I've had many cases that 12 months can be quite normal for a really good lawyer who's fighting. Right. A really good lawyer who's looking for every angle, who's investigating, who's watching all those videos more than once, who's maybe talking to an expert to get some feedback from them to see if there's anything they see that's helpful.
Okay.
One of my experts taught me how the breath test result, when we get that piece of paper, one of the machines has the chart on it where we can actually see visually your breath and how it's chart, for lack of a better word.
Okay.
And so I saw some peculiarities with the chart. It didn't look normal. It didn't have the normal, how you would expect the breath to show that it's rising, and then the breath is consistent as you're blowing, and then it just drops off because you quit blowing.
Right.
There were some dips in it.
Okay.
So the expert told me what that was, and I won every single one of those cases when I saw that.
Right.
But you have to be curious. You have to be really curious and not just read a police report because they all look bad.
Right.
There's no such thing as a police report where I get it and go, oh, well, I'm going to win this. That's easy.
Exactly.
They're innocent. They weren't. No, they all look terrible.
Yeah. For a reason, for a purpose. Okay. We've talked about it and touched on it, but I think it's really important when we talk about a first-time DUI and how it's important that you have a competent professional address that case because of what could happen later. And I just want you to talk a little bit about, flipping it to second and third, and maybe you did take a probation on the first one, or maybe you didn't necessarily hire the top gun like yourself. And so there is something on your record. What's going to happen further down the road?
Well, I have to say something about what you just said.
Yeah.
My biggest pet peeve is when I ask someone, how many DWIs do you have in your past? Oh, no, that one is not on my record.
Right.
And I hear lawyers, and I even had a municipal judge within the last year tell my client, your lawyer did really good for you. This is not in your record. And I turned around and said, that judge doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as not on your record. In the old days before the internet, an SIS meant, which is a suspended imposition of sentence in Missouri. It's not a diversion. You pled guilty.
Right.
It is on your record as an arrest and a guilty plea for life unless you qualify for an expungement, which takes 10 years minimum, after 10 years after you've gotten off that probation, which was 2 years mandatory by statute in Missouri to get the SIS.
Yeah.
And so it is on your record. It is a guilty plea. So if you get another one in the future, now we got number 2. And if you get another one, now we got number 3. That one, there's no such thing as it's not on your record. Maybe I kept it off your driving record. That's a different issue. Maybe I kept it off the public record. It's no longer on CaseNet, or it's not accessible to the public. But you have a criminal record. You have an arrest record. They're private, but the internet has changed everything. The internet, they mine all those companies all across the world. I tell everybody in China and Russia, somebody has your record and they've mined it, and then they're selling it to any future employer or future landlord for $35. With misinformation. And all you can do, well, unfortunately, you've probably not gotten hired and not gotten housing because of it. It's too late. But all you can do is ask a lawyer to write them a letter and tell them to fix their record. Well, how many of them are there?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's thousands of those kinds of companies out there. It's impossible to get ahead of it. So that's why we believe from the very first one you fight. Because the future is not just, well, there's no such thing as keeping it off your record. An SIS is not a gift. An SIS, I could skip law school. Well, I couldn't skip law school. I have to be a lawyer to walk into court, but I could be an estate planning lawyer who doesn't know crap about DWI law and get you an SIS. That's not a gift.
Yeah.
That is the norm. You don't want an SIS. You want better than an SIS. And very few lawyers know how to fight and get that. And sometimes even we have to end up pleading guilty and doing the SIS because it is the only thing that's going to be possible in that circumstance. It happens. There are plenty of people that still have to plead guilty and do the 2 years probation.
You just want to be able to cross off, whatever checklist or whatever. You be able to be like, hey, I can poke holes. You
can't win the lottery if you didn't buy a ticket. You can't survive cancer if you didn't go to a doctor and try to beat it. I mean, you have to hire a specialist. You don't go to your family doctor for heart surgery. You go to a specialist. You go to someone who really knows DWI law. They go to the national programs. They go to the state programs. They're getting more than 15 hours per year of training, even though our only requirement is 15 hours a year. A really good DWI defense lawyer has more than 15 hours per year. I'm over 50 hours per year in DWI only, let alone the other 50 I get in criminal law generally and trial law.
Let's talk about when that person comes into your office. What should they be bringing with them? What is the initial conversation like? Give me a little bit about when they're coming into you and talking to you. I'm assuming they've been screened by a paralegal or something like that, so they, that this is a case that you're going to take.
Right. In our law firm, we have a client services specialist who does the intake process, figures out that yes, you need a lawyer. Yes, you need this kind of lawyer, whether it's within 15 days, so they're immediately helping you save your driver's license or putting you on notice of we need to do something now to file this lawsuit. And so there are many things that because they're so urgent, the lawyer can be at a good law firm. Like thankfully I have a system set up to where I can be at a training seminar, I can be teaching, I can be on vacation, and someone at the office knows how to at least save the driver's license and get the ball rolling for you immediately. And get the firm hired so that you have counsel starting the job, whether you've met with the attorney or not is not relevant. And so we would, of course, ask you to bring in all the paperwork that you received at your arrest. Or received in the mail. Sometimes that happens too. We would want all of that. And then we can gather things after that, because let's say there was a hospital involved or an ambulance involved from an accident, or a tow truck took your vehicle. All that other kind of paperwork you may not have on you, we will gather for you. We will do our investigation. We will gather the police reports. If you happen to have it, great. But by the time you got it, it's too late on the driver's license side. Those reports are never ready within 15 days.
Right. Okay.
So
I think the big takeaway from this, and I've known this just because most of my colleagues practice this, a lot of my colleagues practice this area of law. Is you have to get to a qualified lawyer as soon as it happens. And it just cannot stress the importance of that. and how you cannot get that time back. And
Right.
and it's just crucial. And it's hard because sometimes people, and somebody might be watching this video 35 days or after they've been arrested, because they're thinking, oh, my court date isn't for 2 months. I don't need to worry about this.
Oftentimes your court date for the criminal side is far in the future,
Yeah.
but you have that other need for your driver's license to be saved, and you need to do something very, very quickly. Thankfully, I have a team. There's 5 of us, 6 if I count my part-time receptionist,
Right.
who all understand the importance of moving quickly.
Yes.
It will help you, even if you don't hire us. We'll at least
Right.
help you and tell you
These are
due
your time
dates,
limits.
deadlines, time limits. Bring that piece of paper in, or I'll tell you how to fill it out, and you fax it at your office or your FedEx
Right.
or whatever.
Okay. What question have I missed that I need to? Was there a certain thing you want to talk about that you think somebody that is a potential client or a viewer would want to know about DWI that I haven't asked?
I think that I'm involved in the National College of DUI Defense. And what that means is I travel the country teaching, but also learning at seminars. What I've learned is that nationwide, there's something that's picking up in every state more and more and more, is going to be more prevalent in our state. And it's not the alcohol-related DWIs. It's marijuana, drugs in general we've been dealing with for a while, not as common. Marijuana is picking up according to the statistics. And people who take medication. I have a friend who had a case where his client was on Benadryl. And in Johnson County, Missouri, they wouldn't dismiss. They wanted him to plead guilty to Benadryl. The jury said no. He had to go to jury trial and spend that money to fight for his life.
Right.
And the jury said no. But that means they said not guilty, by the way. But he had to spend a lot of money for that lawyer to fight that. That's a lot of work for a lawyer to take your case and devote their time and energy and expertise to just you.
Right.
And so it's not cheap to go to jury trial.
No.
But medication, I'm seeing more and more of the opioids, the Xanax, even people who are just taking their prescription. We're seeing that nationwide. More and more arrests for you following your doctor's prescription.
Right.
It's scary.
Yeah.
So you have to have a lawyer who really understands how to win those cases, how to fight for you in those cases.
Right. I think with the advent of the legalization of marijuana, whether it's medical or for recreational use, in those cases, I feel like we're sort of hard to prove because it kind of depends on how much weed you smoke in general, of whether you were intoxicated and, too much to drive. I don't know if that has changed, but we don't have a level in Missouri where it's, your blood shows this much Delta 9, so therefore you are DWI. Other states have that. Okay. We don't even test for Delta 9 in Missouri. Okay. My lab report in the case I just got dismissed said carboxy THC. That's what the Missouri State High Patrol lab said was in my client's blood. Okay. Well, carboxy THC is a non-psychoactive metabolite. You could have smoked marijuana a week ago. You're not impaired. Yeah. That's all that blood test in Missouri can show. Because they don't have the methodology. It's too scientific to go into the reasons, but they don't have the methodology in Missouri to test, to really make those cases, so to speak, for the government. Our clients get arrested, they hire us, we get a dismissal almost every single time. Right. Okay. What's the rationale of Utah going to 0.05? Well, it's Utah. I think that they had just a strong lobby because their state legislature was convinced that 0.05 was a number that they needed to lower their limit to. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the science, the NHTSA studies that are from, unfortunately, a million years ago, we're talking the 70s, 80s, and 90s, there's no current scientific testing that's supporting the NHTSA training that we're giving to officers. Right. And the testing was all done on 0.10 years and years and years ago. In fact, in Missouri, most of the country was 0.10 not that long ago, at least in my memory, in my generation as a lawyer. But prior to that, it was 0.12 and 1.5. Right. Right. It's really political, unfortunately. There's not a lot of common sense rationale that why would we say 0.05 is a cutoff that makes any sense whatsoever, because it doesn't. Right. It does not cause impairment. Yeah. We have Mark Ellebrecht, who's a lawyer legislator that is going to come on the show next week, and I'm very excited to kind of talk about what's brewing down in Jeff City in terms of this and a bunch of other different legislation that.
Hopefully next year they pass a new expungement law.
Oh,
They tried this year.
okay, for the DWI.
For everything.
For everything. Okay.
All the expungement.
Okay.
We have multiple. We unfortunately have 5 statutes.
Right,
for
right, yeah,
expungement.
yeah. Well, I had somebody on, and she did a great job talking about how she could get what the expungement is as it stands now. Kim, I'm so glad you came.
Thank you for inviting me.
And maybe we could get you back to do a drug-related one. Just kind of go down the rabbit hole on that, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that are interested and that will be affected.
For driving under the influence of drugs.
Yes.
And drugs can be your medication.
Yes. And so.
And medical marijuana is going to be your medication.
Yes.
So therefore you really need to have some good training.
I am just going to be so curious about how all that happens in Missouri. So it's going to be here soon. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And her information obviously is on the screen. It will be in the post below the video. Call her, contact her, and if we haven't said it enough, do it right away. Find a competent lawyer that specializes in DUI within 48 hours of getting your DUI. Do it there. Most of these folks work on the weekends because that's when a lot of that business is happening. And so, I mean, I'm not saying they would for sure answer your call, but a lot of them do.
You can book appointments on my website on a Friday night or a Saturday or a Monday.
Yes.
So you don't have to worry about someone answering the phone.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, thank you. And everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching.